As soon as it says go live, we are live. And we are live. There we go. All right, thanks to some technical difficulties. We are 1 minute late. My apologies, but we have a special guest joining us tonight on the Ultimate Cavaliers show. It's one who we have not talked to yet on this platform, but I'm very excited to bring on for the first time, and I'll tell you who that is coming up right now on the Ultimate Cavaliers show. What is up, guys? McNuggets. As always, Jason Lloyd has the night off, which means we have brought in a reinforcement, and it is my guy, Kolb. I guess he's just Kolb. He's known on Twitter as 3_ Kolb, 3_. As I just learned a second ago, he is a through and through Cleveland native, still based in Cleveland. I thought he was from LA, and that was a bad job out of me. But Kolb, appreciate you joining us tonight. Ready to talk some Cavs, and thrilled that you have a little different perspective than the normal people in the UCSS universe we talk to try and hammer out some of the offseason moves or lack thereof the Cavs have made so far.
Hey, man, thank you for having me on. And I always love talking to Cavs. I love watching the Cavs. And, yeah, I think I have a little bit of a different perspective than everybody on the team, right?
That's the beauty of discourse, of social media, and of a platform like this where we can have discussions with people that don't have the exact same perspective. And frankly, if we all had the same perspective, it wouldn't be fun. That's part of what makes basketball and football and baseball and sports so much fun is you can come at the same situation from two different angles, and eventually someone gets proven right and someone gets proven wrong. And Jason, I always prove him wrong. So, Kolb, I'm excited to see how we go back and forth on this. Let's start with the Cavs offseason as a whole. We've seen New York, and we've seen, to a lesser extent, Milwaukee. Philadelphia made the splash with Paul George. They've all made improvements to their roster in one way or another. The Cavs, I believe, are one of two teams throughout the NBA who have yet to make a single outside addition to its roster from last season. And I just want to start with the basic question of this. Are you surprised Koby Altman and company haven't done anything up to this point outside of the draft and re-signing Donovan Mitchell?
I'm a little surprised, especially in the aftermath of Donovan Mitchell actually signing an extension with the Cavs. Massive win for the organization, obviously, massive win for the fan base. Proved all the national media wrong. He stayed in Cleveland. He likes being here. So that's a beautiful thing. But for him to do that and then you not do literally anything else all offseason while your rivals and the other playoff teams or potential contenders in the conference have all tried to at least attempted to get better. Even a team like the Orlando Magic signing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to at least try and get better. It's a little concerning. I'm not entirely sure what the plan was. I'd like to imagine that it couldn't have been, hey, we're going to sign Donovan and then we're good. Like everybody go on vacation and enjoy your summers. We'll reconvene when the season's about to start. I highly doubt that was the plan. I'm not sure what the plan could have been, but we'll see what they do going forward.
Have you watched any of the HBO Hard Knocks Giants offseason?
I absolutely have.
So I guess we always assume that if they haven't made a move, they haven't tried. I'm very curious if they were in on any of these guys that ended up signing elsewhere and there was just a price point differential that the Cavs were unwilling to go over to get some players. But when I look at the Milwaukee Bucks, who essentially have their core together, there was rumors about trading Brook Lopez. I never really bought into that. Their core next year, and they don't call it the core four. I don't know how you feel about the core four nickname. I can't stand it. But, you know, their core four of Middleton, Giannis, Dame, and Brook Lopez was always coming back. But despite the fact they didn't have a ton of cap space, they still found ways to acquire Gary Trent Jr. and Taurean Prince, essentially on veteran minimums. And those guys aren't going to move the needle. They're not going to make you a 55-win to a 60-win team. But it's valuable depth and guys off the end of the bench who could play for stretches of the regular season. And, yeah, maybe they're not playoff rotation guys, but at least they can give you minutes if counted on and are more reliable than a rookie who has yet to prove it, or a second-year guy like a Luke Travers or an Amani Bates who could turn into something we just don't know yet. And frankly, I'm a little surprised the Cavs haven't been more active in those kind of negotiations and deals, even though I know for a fact that the Isaac Okoro sign and trade and or restricted free agency offer sheet that's impending has kind of handcuffed them to not be able to really do nearly as much as they want. That's at least how I'm looking at it and trying to wrap my brain around the fact that they just haven't done anything yet. And I didn't think they were good enough last year to not do anything to then run it back and somehow be in a better standing in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, I think me and you are in agreement here. I do think that once they put it out there, they weren't going to move anybody from the core four. And I also don't really like calling them that, but I get it. You know what I'm saying? They're the four best players on the team. So I understand it. They're all relatively young. I get that. But once you put it out there that we're not willing to trade anyone, or at least we need to be blown away by an offer for us to actually move somebody. The next part of that is, okay, keeping the core together, I think that's reasonable. Right. I think you want to see if Kenny Atkinson and the coaching staff can get more out of him. I think that's a reasonable thing. Running the exact same team out there in consecutive seasons, that's not reasonable to me. Like you saw where this could go. Like, I don't think Kenny Atkinson could get that much more out of this team. You know what I mean?
Listen, I like Kenny Atkinson a lot. And I think his staff that he's put together so far is filled with guys who are legitimately proven commodities in terms of player development. But the Cavs, and I feel like a lot of Cavs fans are like, hey, we got player development. We're good. All 30 teams in the league are banking on player development this offseason. Like, every single team is hoping that their good players become great players. Their great players become superstars. And if that's all you're banking on, and granted, Evan Mobley may have the most room to make a legitimate serious jump from being a good player into a all-star to all NBA caliber player. Like, I still believe in his ceiling to the utmost extent. I hate the fact that, well, we got player development. We're good. Well, A, there's no guarantee it happens in one offseason. And B, if you think you're the only team that's going to have any players improve, you're going to be sorely mistaken when October and November roll around. So I'm frustrated, but I'm trying to keep my expectations realistic because none of the guys the Cavs could have been in on were serious needle movers unless they were to break up the core four in a trade, which is what I wanted to ask you about next. I think you said you understand bringing the core four back. Do you like the idea of running the core four back?
Here's my thing. And I don't want to make anybody angry. Far be it for me to make somebody angry with something I have to say about a sports team. You know what I mean? But it's confusing to me because I feel like the fit between Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, I think they like each other. I'm sure that like they're friends and they like playing together. And I think that in a sense, they've worked well together up until this point. But I do think if you want the growth of Mobley to happen, and I think that's what most Cavs fans want, right? You want to see him take the quote unquote, I hate this word too, the leap.
Yeah.
You know, you want to see him take the leap. Is he going to be capable of doing that with Jared Allen still on the roster? Is the real question you have to ask yourself. And I know people love Jared Allen and they love the Fro, and he's a great dude and he's a great personality. And he's probably on the best contract in all of the NBA relative to his production. Not like 2 years,
outside of rookies, he's definitely like Wemby's on the best contract, all things considered.
Yeah.
But yeah, outside of rookies, Jared Allen's deal at the moment is spectacular.
Yeah, like I completely understand why there's legitimate reasons, like I said, to keep him on the team and not just be in a hurry to trade him. But if the development of Evan Mobley and try to get him to become a star/superstar level player is a priority, I'm not entirely sure he's going to be able to do that with Jared Allen on the roster unless he becomes one of the better three-point shooting bigs in the league. I mean, he made some progress last season. Need to see more of it. I think he shot 38% from three or something like that.
37 on 1.2 attempts, which is not enough of a sample size to say he's a shooter and/or not a shooter. It's still a giant unknown.
It's giant unknown. It's like there's progress, but we would need to see a significant uptick in value. Like he'd have to be taking 4 a game.
Yeah.
And still shooting 37% for me to be like, okay, this is a thing. It's going to work. You can keep Allen, that kind of thing. And I haven't even gotten into the Darius and Donovan thing. And listen, if you follow me on Twitter and you see me talk about the Cavs, I've been saying this for years. Investing in 2 small guards and expecting to win at a high level it doesn't happen. Like it literally just does not happen. And I'm not trying to down talk Darius or Donovan. It's usually you can get away with having one small guard and you can win a title that way, but two, like you're talking conference finals at best.
And I think with the two current small guards, part of what has hidden the fact that defensively they're not good is that Evan and Jared are so good defensively on the back end that you can actually play those two in a way and not get crushed defensively. And that's why splitting up the core four, like, let's say in a hypothetical world, you got rid of Jared Allen. Well, is Evan ready to play center full time? And then how do the two guards, Donovan and Darius, hold up when they only have one legitimate rim protector back there? And Evan isn't in that free safety Giannis role that I think he's so good at from a defensive standpoint. And he excels at that role because you have Jared Allen primarily in the paint stopping centers on the roll. So it's like, in a way, they fit together. And in another way, to me, they make no sense basketball speaking. It's a modern day game. The pieces of the puzzle just don't fit. And sometimes that's okay. Sometimes you put something together, especially when they're all young, and expect these guys to develop in a certain path, and they don't always go that path. And sometimes it's a better path that you didn't expect. Sometimes it's not as good as a path as you expect. We were sold Evan Mobley as a unicorn. So far, he's a decent racehorse. Like, he just doesn't have a horn. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not a bad player. He's just not the year 3 going into year 4 unicorn the Cavs thought they were getting when they drafted him 3rd overall a couple of years back. And if him and Jared, can't figure out some way to space the floor, and this is where I'll give Atkinson some credit. I do think with a new offensive approach, philosophy, playbook, however you want to phrase it, he'll find ways to, with two bigs, create more space on the court, even if neither of them become a knockdown, consistent three-point shooter. That was not in JB Bickerstaff's offensive atmosphere, for lack of a better word. Like, that didn't exist to JB Bickerstaff. Atkinson can create more space with those two, but is more space enough space? And that is the bigger question with his team. The Cavs are good. Are they good enough? And I don't know how to answer that when you look at the rest of the teams in the East, like a Boston who just won a championship, like the Knicks who just got Mikal Bridges and found a way to bring on like 4 other free agent signings at a lesser level that are at least depth pieces. Philadelphia just signed Paul George and a bunch of other guys, Caleb Martin from Miami. Like, the Cavs aren't going to be bad next year, but are they good enough to actually be legitimate title contenders, which you need to be in the next 2 seasons while you have Donovan under contract? I just don't know, Cole.
Well, I can answer that for you. I can give you the short answer. The answer right now is no. Like, it's just no. Like, they can't. And like you were going back to what you said about internal development, a lot of people are banking on that. Hey, Kenny Atkinson, he said he wants to put the ball in Evan Mobley's hands more, said he wants to use him more like Draymond Green, which I'm going to say something. I've put this out there a couple times, and I'll put it out here to you and in your audience. If the peak of Evan Mobley is like Draymond Green 2.0, are you upset with that?
I'm running to the bank. Listen, Draymond's a Hall of Famer, and although his shot was never what you thought it would end up being, Draymond's he'll never be the personality of Draymond. You talk about two guys on opposite ends of the spectrum. No. My screen's tiny, so this is as big as the scale gets. Like, Evan's on one end of it, not better or worse, just one end of the spectrum, and Draymond's on the complete other. We can't get Evan to speak louder enough to hear him from 4 feet away in the post-game locker room scrums. Draymond will headlock you for looking at him the wrong way. Like, we were talking 2 totally different guys. But yeah, I would run to the bank if you told me it was Draymond 2.0, Cole. Like, I think that's, I don't want to say best case scenario, but I think that's on the upper echelon of realistic expectations if Evan's to reach his full potential.
Yeah, I said this a lot. I'm like, hey, man, if Kenny's really invested in using him and turning him into like a version of Draymond, I think that is the player that you can build around. And that is the player that you can win with. Like, and when I say win, I don't mean 50, 55 regular season. I mean like deep into the postseason. You can win with this guy. I've said it for years now. Evan's a way better passer than he gets credit for. They do not put the ball in his hands enough for him to actually show it on a consistent basis. But in that Boston Celtics series, when they were just giving him the ball, I'm like, hey, here, do stuff. I think that's when everybody was like, oh, okay, he can be that player. Okay, like he can be the player that we thought we were getting when they drafted him 3rd overall. He just needs the ball more. He just needs the opportunity to do more things. And that's kind of why I've always felt like they needed to break up the team a little bit so you give him the opportunity to do it. But going back to your original question about where they stack up in the East, I'll put it like this. They're definitely not better than the Celtics. I don't think anybody would argue that they are.
No, if you do, you got to get checked. Like the Celtics, until spoken otherwise, are the number 1 team in basketball. They brought the whole team back. I don't mean to cut you off, but the notion that the Cavs played the Celtics close in the playoffs, to me, is the biggest fallacy in the world. If you look at the 4th quarter point differential, it's not close whatsoever. And my biggest complaint with Boston all year was, hey, they just play with their food. Like, look, when the Dean Wade game, like they were up 20 points in the 3rd quarter, decided, we don't care. The Cavs were never actually close in that series. Like, let's just call a spade a spade a spade. Or a spade a spade. I said a spade an extra time, but they weren't that close. So, yeah, Boston's in a tier of its own, and then we could talk about everyone else.
And like, I don't think they're better than the Knicks. I didn't think they were better than the Knicks last year. They're definitely not better than the Knicks now. If the Knicks stay healthy, that's the one team in the East I'm like, okay, maybe they can knock off the Celtics.
And that's a matchup nightmare for the Cavs, too. You talk about the Cavs' lack of size on the wing. I mean, the Knicks are a 6'8", 7'3" wingspan factory with OG, Mikal Bridges. Josh Hart is I personally love his game. Like, I would take Josh Hart on my team 100 out of 100 days of the week. And between him, between the Bridges and Anunoby combo, you have Julius Randle. Like, that team was built in a lab to negate everything the Cavs want to do offensively.
Honestly, they're building a lab to really stop the Celtics too. If you really look at that roster, like they are the one team that the Celtics probably don't want to play. But then just keep on going. Philadelphia 76ers. The Cavs do not have any wings on this roster, man.
No.
They don't have any wings on this roster. They didn't want to play the 76ers last year at the playoffs. And then the 76ers went and got Paul George.
It's a great point. I hadn't even put 2 and 2 together, but yeah, they intentionally lost to Charlotte in the last game of the season to set up a matchup with Orlando, and Orlando got better. And that series went 7 with the team that had never made the playoffs before. Like, I still have the Cavs above Orlando, but I could be persuaded in Orlando's favor by the right argument. Like, I think it's pretty close. Indiana's right in the mix. Where do you put Milwaukee? Ahead of Cleveland, or are they in the same tier as Cleveland?
I would put them. So when I look at matchups like this, I think of, okay, in a playoff series, if it was the Bucks and the Cavs, who's the best player in that series?
It's Giannis.
It's still Giannis.
It's not close. Giannis is clear.
It's still Giannis. So I would have them over the Cavs just off the strength of they have Giannis, we don't.
Yeah.
So I would have them above the Cavs too. It's not looking great, man. It's not looking great right now.
So by your just verbal rankings real quick, the Cavs were the 4th seed the last 2 years in the playoffs. Regular season record doesn't necessarily indicate how good you are. The Sixers, they might as well rest Embiid for 60 games during the regular season, so he's actually healthy during the postseason. So I wouldn't be shocked if the Cavs finish ahead of the Sixers in the standings, just because Philadelphia is like, we need all our guys healthy. We're going to rest a bunch of dudes, yada, yada. You just named 4 teams that you think are at least clear, or 3 teams that are clear-cut ahead of Cleveland. Milwaukee, ahead based off the Giannis factor. Orlando, Indiana, Cleveland could all kind of be a toss-up. I mean, there's a legitimate chance the Cavs are a good team this year and in the play-in as a 7 seed. Like, that would not be an outrageous thought process, and it would be a monumental, from a psyche standpoint, like a monumental step back, because the East has certainly gotten better. The Cavs, for better or worse, are a standstill. The Atkinson thing is TBD. I expect it to be an improvement, but hard to quantify how a coach really changes all those guys until we see it. But, like, would it be crazy in your mind if the Cavs were a playing team next year? As crazy as it sounds saying out loud, like, would it truly be crazy?
It wouldn't be crazy at all. I mean, part of that depends on how you feel about the Pacers and what they did this past year.
I'm not a lot of, but
yeah, like a lot of people think it was like, hey, like they ran into a bunch of teams that were hurt at the perfect time in the playoffs and made the Eastern Conference Finals. They probably won't do it again. But the Orlando Magic are the one team in the back of my head. I was like, hey, they might be better than the Cavs this year. You want to talk about internal development? Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner.
And you look at the summer league game on Friday, like it's a summer league. We'll talk about it in a sec, but Anthony Black looked really good. He could be a second-year guy who makes a major jump. Jet Howard, another guy. Like, they got some dudes.
Man, that is the team that if I was a Cavs fan, I would be a little bit worried about.
So
because that pushes you from possibly being top 4 to like at best 5th seed.
Yeah. Or 6th seed, and now you're facing Philly, New York, or Boston in the first round. And to me, Cole, I guess part of my frustration, and I want to quantify this whole offseason frustration with, if it was via free agency, I don't think anyone they were signing was going to make a massive difference. No. Trade, you could have got, theoretically speaking, a Brandon Ingram or a legitimate wing. And I'm not sure it's an actual upgrade talent-wise, but at least it jumbles the deck to see if you can have a better quote-unquote puzzle that fits together to solve some of these issues you've had in the playoffs. And who knows if Ingram was realistic or not. Like, I don't love Ingram. I've talked about it on this show a bunch of times. Like, he's by far the best wing on the Cavs roster. If you place him here today, he's eons better than anyone they have. But I would be scared as hell to pay him that 5-year or 4-year, $200 million max. Like, I totally get the concerns on it. But if you were to make a trade to bring in a real wing, and to do that, you had to break up the core 4, I was interested to see what that experiment looked like. And if said result or this experiment resulted in solutions that the Cavs just don't currently have on the roster, which is we don't have anyone to guard a big wing, and we don't have anyone outside of the 2 little guards right now who can create offense for themselves. I still don't know with this roster where those answers are coming from. And that's, I think, what frustrates me more than anything else about their lack of real moves this offseason.
I'm not going to lie to you. It's funny you say that you're not a fan of Brandon Ingram, because I'm probably the one person on Twitter who has been advocating for the Cavs to get Brandon Ingram more than anybody else. I will say this, though. I do think it's less of a talent. I don't think it's a talent issue with Ingram at all. I think it's hey, we can't pay this dude $50 million a year. Like we can't. No team is giving him that much money. No team is giving him that much money unless he comes out and says, hey, I will extend for significantly less than the maximum that I am, capable of making. No chance the Cavs do that.
I mean, he wants Donovan money. And with all due respect to Ingram, even if you love Ingram, like, he ain't Donovan Mitchell. So
nah, he's not. He's not. I'm thinking if he wanted somewhere in the ballpark of what Darius was making right now, I'd be like, we can work that out for sure.
But not 53 a year, 50 a year, whatever it is. And my thing with Ingram, he could play. He's talented. The upside, like, if you get the best version of Brandon Ingram, stud. I just feel like the inconsistency in his game and how infrequently he brings that top tier level of play. And I just remember watching, and I know you also follow the Lakers, so you got ties to him back in LA, and I'm not sure how much you watched in New Orleans, but whenever they seemed to need Ingram the most was when he was the most invisible. And I'm not sure that's totally fair, considering I don't watch a ton of Pelicans, I'll be honest. But at the end of this most recent season, Zion's out. I know he's coming back from injury, and it's like, Ingram, hey, you're the dude now, we need you. And it just wasn't good enough from Brandon.
It wasn't. Lou Dort had that man in a cell that entire series. And to be fair to BI, Lou Dort does that to a lot. Lou Dort has done that to a lot of great players in the playoffs, but man, it did not look good. It did not look good at all.
Oh yeah, Dort is my favorite defensive player in the league. Like, the way that dude, the
so
combo
good.
strength, speed, agility, like, no one stops Luka. He did as good a job at controlling Luka as humanly possible, and he's good. Like, how OKC keeps finding guys undrafted that turn into 5-year, $80 million contracts, but worth every penny, I don't understand. We got to take a break real quick, Cole. Then I got 2 more questions for you, and then we will wrap up here. But the Ultimate Cavaliers Show, as always, is brought to us by FanDuel, and you guys know FanDuel is my favorite read on the market, so get ready to laugh as we continue to tell you why I love sports so much. And when the playoffs wind down, sports just aren't sportsing as much as I want them to. But thanks to FanDuel, I can whip up bets anytime on any game I can think of. So they keep the sports going even when the games aren't available, like tonight, which is the one day of the sports calendar where there are no major professional sports games going on. Every day this summer, FanDuel has a new bet, boost, or bonus. So there's something for everyone every day all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/UCSS and get on the action right now. FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball and the ultimate Cleveland sports show. Kolb, how much Summer League have you had a chance to watch so far this year for the Cavs?
I mean, locked into the Bronny experience with the Lakers. I'm locked into the Bronny show, but also been locked into the Cavs. I've been very, very pleased with what I saw, especially that second game.
Yeah, we could throw the first one out. I mean, that was as bad as the first one was as good as the second one is. And I'm curious real quick, if the Cavs aren't going to make any outside improvements to the wing position, at least not yet, you have to assume that Koby Altman and company are banking on at least two of the following to play some legitimate minutes at the wing. Amani Bates, rookie Jalen Tyson, and Luke Travers. And of those three, I know it's a tiny sample size, but who do you think has the best chance to actually play a legitimate role in the Cavs rotation on the wing this season, and why? There's no right answer, by the way. I can make a case for two of the three, really.
I can definitely make a case for two of the three. I would say best chance, in my opinion, is Luke Travers. Just from watching him, even last year in the summer, I thought he could have helped the Cavs last year, to be completely honest. But watching him play in the summer league, he's a guy who's obviously wing size. I believe he's 6'8".
6'8", yeah.
Yeah, I believe he's 6'8". I think he's more athletic than he actually gets credit for being. He's a good playmaker at the position. He's always looking for the open guy, always trying to hit guys in a position to score. And I think he's very, very, very versatile defensively. And I think that's something that Kenny Atkinson would love. And I think that he would fit well with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley on that end of the court. I think he's probably the one who would have the best chance of actually playing real minutes right now.
Yeah, I would go Travers. I'll make the case for Tyson. Travers, he's the connector. He's a glue guy. He's not going to stand out. He's not going to be a great shooter, not a great athlete. I'm curious if those intangible skills that pop up in the summer league play after play translate when the game's just moving so much faster because the competition is eons and eons better. But I'm willing to give him a shot. Tyson looks the part, though. And I remember on draft night, Kolb, I had notes on 15 different guys. And I talked to some of the guys in the league I know. I talked to a couple of Cavs guys I know, hey, give me a little blurb on this guy. And I didn't even ask about Tyson because I didn't really think he'd be a target. And when it was drafted, I was like, Jalen Tyson, wing from Cal. I have nothing on him. I had nothing. So I had to go back, look, watch. He just looks like a freaking ox out there. And of all the wings on the Cavs roster, he might be physically the most capable of handling a Jaylen Brown or a Tatum. I'm not saying skill-wise he's ready to, but from a physical standpoint, he looks the size of what you need from a wing, and he plays with that dog mentality. His shot's a little too slow still. He's got to work on the release. I'm not 100% sure he's ready to be a shot creator on the NBA level yet, but you kind of need a guy at that size who just plays with their head on fire and makes shit happen. And I feel like he could be that crazy wild card that may lose you a game every week or 2 weeks, but also can make a few spark plays that win you a game or two. And he reminds me a little bit of a supersized Delly. And I know it's not a great comparison yet. They play different positions, but just the reckless abandon in which they seem to play with, that can lead to energy plays and momentum changing plays. So I think Travers is the right answer. I'll give you the reason for Tyson. And Amani Bates showed a lot in that second game, but I still need to see a lot more before I think he's ready to play a role on the Cavs' actual roster this year.
Yeah, Amani's he's the wild card to me. I feel like he needs one more year of just development. People got to remember he's really young too. He's still really young. I think he needs one more year, get his body a little bit stronger, just have an opportunity in the G League to just play the right way, play the way that the Cavs are actually going to need him to play on the parent club, and then he'll be ready to go. But Jalen Tyson, man, I'm watching him. Like, I was with you. Didn't know who he was when the Cavs picked him. Had no idea who this dude was. Was texting a couple of my buddies who are deep in the hoops, and they were like, "Hey, Cole, one, he's strong as hell.
Yeah,
He's strong. Like he will go up against power forwards and centers and not be bothered. Strong." And somebody said, professional bucket. Like he's somebody who knows how to score, and he's going to know how to score at every level of basketball, and he can help the Cavs right now. So I wouldn't be surprised if he is in the rotation and playing real minutes for the Cavs.
I have a friend of mine who works for a Western Conference team who worked out Tyson, and after they drafted him, I gave him a call, and he just goes, "Yeah, he's strong as an ox," was the exact words he said. And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, he worked out against some 19, 18-year-olds we had in for that particular workout. And he's not the most skilled dude you'll ever see, but those guys are just bouncing off him. Like, he's got an NBA-ready body now. He didn't make sense for us where we were drafting, but for a team like Cleveland drafting at 20, he thought it was a real good pick. So I defer to the people who I know are much smarter than I am. Speaking of Bronny, Kolb, the Lakers and the Cavs meet up tomorrow night, 9 o'clock in the Summer League.
Whew.
Listen, I will not watch the Cavs game tonight. It's 10 o'clock tip. No Summer League game, in my opinion, is important enough to stay up till midnight to watch, especially when it's not probably going to tip off till 10:30. I will watch tomorrow night's game because I'm fascinated by the whole Bronny experiment. And he is yet to shoot well, for lack of a better word, here in the G League. Cole, will it break your heart, or will it make you happy if Bronny has his breakout Summer League performance against the Cavs? Like, how will you, as a split Lakers Cavs fan, react to that possibility if Bronny comes out and has 23 points on 7 of 11 shooting and 3 of 4 from 3?
I'm not gonna lie, man. I feel like Bronny just needs it at this point, man. I'd be happy before. I think he just needs a game where it's like, okay, thank God the shot's falling. I can feel good about myself. I feel like he needs that more than anybody else in the world right now.
I'm rooting for him. It sucks that the cardiac arrest happened before his freshman season at USC, which derailed any chance he had to show whether he can be a legitimate player or not. And then B, I don't think he's handled everything super well. He hasn't asked for any of this, and he's become a punchline that he doesn't deserve to be. So I feel bad for the kid. But then I remember he signed an $8 million contract, and I do not have nearly that much money, and he's way younger than me. So at the end of the day, I don't feel too bad. But he definitely doesn't deserve to be the punchline of, frankly, the NBA community right now, like he's kind of become. Because he hasn't done any of it on his own. He hasn't brought it on himself whatsoever.
Yeah, man. Honestly, like the fixation with Bronny right now, and just like on social media and just in basketball media in general, it's a little ridiculous to me. I mean, he's the 55th pick of the draft, man. Yeah. Like, most of the time, those guys don't really become anything. You know what I mean? It's not like the Lakers took him where they took Dalton Connect and then gave him this money and gave him a role and stuff. Like, they didn't do that. He was the 55th pick in the draft. If he ends up becoming a good, like, rotational player in the NBA, that's great. If he doesn't, he was the 55th pick of the draft. You know what I mean? It's not a big deal.
We'll end with this, Kolb. My guy Tony Pesta put this on Twitter earlier today, and I think it's a decent question to ask as we get ready to put the offseason move frenzy behind us. If the Cavs can somehow pull off a sign and trade for Cam Johnson, it would most likely be LeVert and salary and picks to get him, or Okoro, but it makes it a little tougher with Okoro because of all the tax and cap implications. So regardless of who they trade to get Cam Johnson, if the Cavs come out of this offseason with Cam Johnson, would that make this offseason a win?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I think you would have to take it. You'd have to take that as a win, because you could put him right on the 3 in between. Who would it be? Donovan and Evan Mobley. He's a knockdown shooter. He's 6'8". I mean, he's not the greatest defensive player in the world, but I don't think he's any worse than Max Strus out there. You know what I mean? So it would change everything for this team if they got Cam Johnson.
Dorian Finney-Smith, if he's the piece they get back, is it considered a win?
I wouldn't consider that one a win. I think the Dorian Finney-Smith thing is like 2 years too late. Where like if they would have made this move 2 years ago, I'd be like, that's a good move. But now, like he's about to be 32. He had a down year last year on a bad Nets team. Like I think that ship has sailed.
DeAndre Hunter.
That's a little interesting. Undecided. I would have to see it.
So we got one win, one no win, and one undecided. And then last thing, we'll go with Cam Johnson because that was your win. If the Cavs were to acquire Cam Johnson, does that catapult them over Milwaukee into that 4th spot in the East, or are they still in the jambalaya with Orlando and Indiana and whoever else you want to throw in Miami if you want to get real crazy? But are they still in the same spot they are even if they acquire Cam Johnson, or does that give them enough of a boost to get into that solidified top 4 in the East?
I don't think it will put them above, obviously not Boston, the Knicks, or the 76ers, but I do think it gives you it's like, okay, it makes the team make more sense. It makes the team fit better, which probably keeps you above Orlando, which is right where they need to be because the 76ers probably aren't going to get a whole bunch of regular season wins just because Embiid gets hurt all the time. And like they'll probably end up finishing somewhere in the bottom half of the East, but there'll be that one team in the bottom half of the East that nobody's trying to play in a playoff series. like that's where they'll be. So I think if they got Cam Johnson, they could still be kind of like comfortably in that top 4, but also still trying to avoid the 76ers in the series.
It's just crazy to me. Like even if they make a proverbial slam dunk trade, I don't know how much it changes the overall ceiling of the team just because the core 4 kind of is the core 4. And that's what the Cavs are going to roll back into next season. Koby, I appreciate you joining me tonight. Tell the good people out there where they can find you online and what you're doing for work and where they can find all your stuff.
Well, if you're looking for me online, I am on Twitter at __COLB____. For work, I am the social media producer for SB Nation. So if you like any SB Nation content on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, or wherever you get your social stuff, I am the guy posting all the stuff. So thank you for, thank you for supporting us. And, you're the reason we do what we do.
And I just want to pull up one comment here, but Landon Fame says, Koby on UCSS, no way. So yes, look at us bringing 2 different worlds together. Koby, I appreciate you, my friend, and we will talk Cavs soon. We'll see you tomorrow on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show. Peace.